Welcome back to the channel. I'll be covering the most template players in Fantasy Premier League. So to begin with, I'll be discussing the highest owned players in every single position and then talking about a team you could build that is going to be extremely template. So you will be within budget towards the end when I discuss the starting 11 and the captaincy for that particular template team. So that's how things will go in this particular video. It's something I haven't really done before, but throughout preseason, I've done many different types of videos, some brand new ones like summer signings, also promoted clubs. So you're well prepared for Game Week 1 and the rest of the season. The most expensive players in the game are Salah and Erling Haaland, both at 14 million and above, and only one of them is extremely template. The other, whilst not a differential, could still be a massive difference maker in your FPL teams because his ownership is less than 20%, and any returns he does get, especially as your captain, could catapult you up those mini leagues and the rankings. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, whether it's for FPL or UCL Fantasy, which returns this month. So keep your eyes peeled for those videos and live streams, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships. Further links to my videos, amongst my other perks, the Discord server, FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. The same goes for my FPL Challenge League as well. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. As always, we start off with a 100 million budget in Fantasy Premier League, and it's not like Club World Cup Fantasy or the Champions League where you get a 5 million increase going into the knockout stages, because this is a league format with 38 game weeks, and whilst you might get some doubles and blanks, you're not going to get knockout stages per se, and you're not going to get an increase to your budget unless you have a player who goes up in price because of transfer activity, and that's the way you can build team value over the course of the season. So there will be different chip strategies, maybe wildcarding quite early to then build up your team value. If you want me to delve into a chip strategy guide, then let me know down in the comment section below. Let's also get this video to over 100 likes, and we're also getting very close towards 34,000 subscribers, so I very much appreciate all your support. And if you want to see a rating your teams video, then send in your teams in the comments section on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, and the Discord server with an image or just by writing it out yourself. But I'm going to start off with the two goalkeepers, and remember, in this segment, price will not be a factor. I will only be factoring that in towards the very end when I talk about the starting 11 using the website fpl.team and building a template squad that you can afford with your 100 million budget. One of Brentford's summer signings in Kelleher is the only goalkeeper in Fantasy Premier League to have more than 20% ownership at the time of this recording. It's currently at 32.2%, so he's leaps and bounds above everybody else in terms of ownership in this single position. And at 4.5 million with good opening fixtures, despite Brentford losing all their key players and manager, a lot of people are still quite bullish on Kelleher as a cheap enabler in that goalkeeper position, and I think he is probably one of the best goalkeepers overall, which I talked about in that respective video. I have ranked every single position, of course, with midfielders, defenders and forwards, and the same goes for the goalkeepers, and there are separate podcasts discussing differentials, promoted clubs, summer signings, budget picks, you name it, and Keller has featured in other segments as well. I think he's a standout option in this price point, and you've got a few other options like Verbruggen and Petrovic, but Keller is the template pick in this position. Next up is David Raya, who is second amongst goalkeepers for that ownership, and he comes in at around 18.2%, which is significantly lower than Kelleher, and he's also got quite tough competition by Sells and Sanchez, who could usurp him as the second highest owned goalkeeper in Fantasy Premier League. But despite Arsenal's opening fixtures being quite poor, people are still backing the Gunners' defence to keep clean sheets. And throughout pre-season, they lost to Tottenham Hotspur, but they still kept the clean sheet against AC Milan. They beat Newcastle 3-2, and they also got a victory against Watford by a 2-0 scoreline in a behind closed doors friendly. But David Raya is going to be the number one goalkeeper. Kepa Arrizabalaga was quite impressive in some of the preseason games, but he also picked up an injury and missed out entirely against Tottenham Hotspur. So you'd expect Raya to be the main goalkeeper once again. The same goes for Keller, of course, who replaces Mark Flecken, who left for Bayer Leverkusen. And I think these two are amongst the very best goalkeepers in the game. The highest owned defender in FPL is Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who showed increased attacking potential last season, but the main appeal is that 4.5 million price tag and also the increased attacking potential we saw last season from the former Man United player. He also has excellent opening fixtures, and West Ham start things off against Sunderland away from home. And West Ham have had a fairly mixed bag pre-season, some highs and lows there, just like they had under Graham Potter, and for the last couple of years in the Premier League. And whilst West Ham have signed Diouf, who has shown attacking potential in pre-season, and Kilman is probably the best for defensive contributions, I think Wan-Bissaka offers a mixture of all of them, and he's the most nailed-on West Ham defender that you can buy. So that's why he comes in at 31.7% ownership, but it's a bit different to the goalkeeper position where Kelleher is leaps and bounds above everybody else in terms of ownership. In this case, he is only 5.3% higher in terms of ownership than second place Frimpong, who also makes it into this team, and he has also shown attacking potential in pre-season, and it will be a big debate between him and Milos Kerkez. But some recent updates that are worth mentioning is that Connor Bradley is doubtful for the Community Shield final against Crystal Palace, and this video is recorded a couple of days before that, so let's see what happens with that situation. But Frimpong should start in Gameweek 1, and I think he will get 30 plus Premier League starts. But my kind of thinking from early on in pre-season was that Bradley could get a few starts from the beginning, and Frimpong will have to earn his way into that starting 11, but now he might not have to be fair, with Bradley's injury situation, and Virgil van Dijk also missed the recent preseason friendly due to illness, I believe. So I think with Liverpool, you've got many different ways of covering that defensive line, but Frimpong might be the most exciting, but it might be worth going for Milos Kerkez instead, who has less than half of Frimpong's ownership, and if you want to go against the template, that might be the way to go in terms of covering that Premier League champions defence with Liverpool. In third is Aït-Nouri in this defensive line. His ownership is 24.1%, and you've also got Gvardiol at the same price tag, but I think he could be prone to rotation despite his versatility, whilst Aït-Nouri will only play as a left-back in that Man City system, or if they choose to go for a back three, he'll be the main left wing back, so to speak. But he showed a lot of attacking potential in the Club World Cup, which I also covered on this channel, and I think Aït-Nouri is another exciting fullback to own. But with defensive contributions being a big factor this season, you can choose centre-backs now over these assist makers and also goal scorers from wing-back like Aït-Nouri and Frimpong, who might need to adjust still to their new clubs, but they have shown a lot of promise in the recent games. So I think both of them are very decent picks, and I can understand why they're so template in this defensive line. The same goes for Konsa, but for a different reason. He's more like Aaron Wan-Bissaka with a cheaper price tag, decent long-term fixtures, and Aston Villa are top of the fixture difficulty rating until Gameweek 8, and Konsa can start centre-back and right-back. His versatility is very important for Unai Emery's system, and he is by far the best Aston Villa defender you can go for. So I think Konsa is definitely worth a purchase at 4.5 million, and his ownership is 23.6% at the moment. And in fifth is Gabriel. He only played 45 minutes against Watford in a behind closed doors friendly, and in the Asian tour across Singapore and Hong Kong, he didn't feature whatsoever. But Mikel Arteta said, and he was very adamant, that Calafiori, Timber and Gabriel will all be available for Gameweek 1 in that opener against Manchester United. It comes as no surprise to see Mohamed Salah as the highest owned player in Fantasy Premier League after setting the all-time record for points last season, and he comes in with 56.7% ownership despite being priced at 14.5 million, the highest of any player in the game. But it's not like Erling Haaland in years gone by, who set records for FPL ownership at around 80%. Even Gabriel Jesus, when he first joined Arsenal, had very high ownership figures. So it's good to see a bit of a spread, at least, with these template picks, even though these numbers still seem incredibly high. They aren't as high as they might have been in previous campaigns, and I think Salah is still worth that 14.5 million price tag. He scored his first goal in pre-season against Athletic Bilbao, but also missed a penalty. I think McAllister should be on penalties for Liverpool, to be honest. He is an even more reliable penalty taker, and if Isak were to join, I still think Salah will retain those duties, and that makes him an even better FPL asset. And for Liverpool, he has been by far the best player in the Premier League era from an FPL perspective. Next up is Cole Palmer, who won't have the same figure, but it's still 52.8%, and I think that has been increasing as time has gone on. And Chelsea have had a bit of a break after winning the Club World Cup, and Cole Palmer really stepped up in the knockout stages, but in 2025, his form overall has been questionable, and he has really struggled to score goals, especially from open play. I believe in the Premier League, from January all the way until the end of the season, he scored one goal, and it was a penalty against Liverpool, who were pretty much dancing and celebrating their Premier League title. But I think Palmer is still the second best Premier League midfielder, and I've ranked all of them in that respective video, so be sure to check it out. But in third is Florian Wirtz, yet another Liverpool asset, and his ownership is 33.9%. So that has gone down considerably over the last couple of weeks, which is quite surprising because I had the sensation that his ownership could go to 40 or 50%, by the time we get to Game Week 1. And that might still happen, to be fair, but at this moment in time, it doesn't seem likely. And you've got so many other players in this position. And if new signings come to the Premier League, especially amongst midfielders, then Florian Wirtz might not really get to those ownership figures despite being underpriced at 8.5 million. Next up is Kudus, who is another summer signing from West Ham United to Tottenham Hotspur. Kudus the Judas, what a name that is, but he hasn't really been great in pre-season. He got an assist against Reading off the bench in his first game for Tottenham Hotspur, but ever since that, he hasn't built upon it from a goals or assist perspective, but he has put in some decent performances, to be fair, and I think he'll be a great signing for Spurs on the right-hand side. He's a massive upgrade on Brennan Johnson and the other players who can feature in that specific position, and I think Kudus will bring that individual quality, some creativity from open play, and also scoring some goals when needed. He can also deliver against the biggest and best clubs in the country, and Man City away in Game Week 2 is no exception. His ownership is 26%, but the final player is Morgan Rogers, who has been very impressive in pre-season, just like Ollie Watkins. The two of them have really carried Aston Villa in some of those matches, and I think it might be worth doubling up on the villains offensively with Morgan Rogers and Watkins. But in terms of the template, it's Konsa and Rogers who are really taking all the limelight. I think amongst forwards, Ollie Watkins is being overshadowed by new signings and also other players in that position, especially at cheaper price tags. But I think Aston Villa have a lot of value to offer, and you might even want to triple up on the villains up until Game Week 8. That isn't a bad strategy whatsoever. But Rogers comes in at 7 million in terms of his price tag, and the ownership is still quite high at 25.3%. And next up would be Brian Mbeumo, but his ownership isn't even at 20%. So there's a massive gap between these five midfielders you see on screen and the rest of the pack. That includes Bukayo Saka, who is still one of the best options in the midfield. When FPL was first launched, João Pedro was the highest owned player in the game for several weeks, even over Mohamed Salah, and I think that's indicative of how people's perceptions of Chelsea have changed after they won the Conference League a couple of months ago. And when João Pedro made that immediate impact in the Club World Cup, he helped them lift that trophy as well. They beat PSG 3-0 in the final despite being the heavy underdogs in that game, and he also made a statement in the semi-finals in his first ever start for Chelsea, scoring a brace against his boyhood club. And of course, in Club World Cup Fantasy, I did have João Pedro and even Palmer as my captain against PSG. And I think those two were complete game changers for Chelsea. And both of them have the exact same ownership at 52.8% at the time of this recording, and I think João Pedro will still be one of the highest owned players come Game Week 1. That won't change unless something happens in terms of injury or suspensions, anything like that. And of course, by the time we get to Game Week 1, a suspension is impossible because they're only playing a few preseason games against the likes of Bayer Leverkusen, for example, and they took a very long break ever since winning the Club World Cup. But the second highest owned forward is Alexander Isak, who is still heavily linked with Liverpool. And if Newcastle can get the likes of Sesko and or Wissa, and at the moment it looks like Man United might have pole position for the signing of Benjamin Sesko, well, that changes everything. But Isak has gone back with Newcastle to train with them, and let's see if anything happens in terms of that transfer. But I still get the impression he's going to join Liverpool at one stage or another, whether it's this summer or next year, as covered in previous podcasts. But Isak's ownership is 29%, and it was even higher before all this kerfuffle and transfer speculation really took place. And I think he's still one of the best forwards in FPL, whether he goes to Liverpool and isn't on penalties, because I still think Salah will have those duties, and it'll be interesting to see how he kind of coexists with Wirtz, Salah, Ekitike, and the other Liverpool attackers. But at Newcastle, he's the undoubted talisman, and it would be great to see him stay at Newcastle and help them compete for a Champions League spot and also have another domestic run like they did in the Carabao Cup, which they won back in February. But in third place is Viktor Gyökeres, and remember, this team has no budget restrictions. Very soon I'll be talking about a 100 million budget squad where you can afford a template squad. And I don't know why you'd want to do that, by the way. If anything, I'd use this video to maybe avoid some of these players and go a little bit different with a few examples named earlier, like Kerkez over Frimpong. But Viktor Gyökeres has an ownership figure of 24.2%. So people are quite excited by this signing, not just Arsenal fans, but also maybe those Arsenal sympathisers or those that want to see a competitive and exciting title race between Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, and perhaps even Chelsea. I think the last time we saw something like this was back in the 2007-2008 season, where we had 4 teams with over 80 Premier League points. It would be great to see that again, and seeing just real competition until the very end of this season. And I think Viktor Gyökeres is a game-changing signing for Arsenal, but let's see how he adapts. And those preseason games that Arsenal have in the Emirates Cup will be very crucial, I think, in terms of seeing their main starting 11. And certain reports indicate that Mikel Arteta is open to tweaking the system a little bit, so Arsenal are more direct when Viktor Gyökeres is on the pitch, as opposed to when Kai Havertz is playing and he's dropping deeper to link up the play with Gyökeres. They want him in the penalty area, finishing those chances and pushing Arsenal over the line. The previous 15-man squad I showed you, which contains the highest owned players in every single position, would cost 111 million. So if you're thinking about building a template squad, this would be it on screen. So I have made a few adjustments. Kelleher does retain his spot between the sticks against Nottingham Forest away from home, and we could finally have that 4 million starting goalkeeper in Dubravka, who is linked with a move to Burnley. So if that goes through, a lot of us would probably start him in Game Week 2 against Sunderland at home. So keep an eye out for that situation, and Dubravka could be that ideal backup goalkeeper in Fantasy Premier League. With the defensive line, I've got Wan-Bissaka, Frimpong and Ait-Nouri, but I have made 2 changes so you can afford most of the key attackers in Palmer, Salah, Wirtz and Kudus by going for Esteve and Alex Moreno, who have identical ownership at 11.5 and 11.6% ownership respectively. And in the forward line, Isak and Joao Pedro are also in here. And the same goes for Mark Guiu, who currently has 5% ownership, but that's going to increase quite significantly once the move to Sunderland is officialised, and also in FPL he's added to the game and all of that good stuff. And the other player to keep in mind is a backup 4-point family midfielder in Aaron Ramsey from Burnley as well. And the rest is kind of self-explanatory. I've been talking about that throughout most of this podcast, and you can see the ownership figures on screen according to the website FPL.team, which does vary a little bit from the FPL website at the moment. So that's why some of the ownership figures I mentioned earlier might seem a little bit different. For example, Cole Palmer is now at 52.7% and Joao Pedro is at 53%. But when I was saying those stats, they both had 52.8% according to the FPL website, which is what I mainly use for these ownership figures. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you like this template squad, and which template players will you be going for in the goalkeeper, defense, midfield and forward positions? And are you looking to go a bit differential in certain cases? There is a respective video about low owned players with less than 10% ownership, and many of them that were covered have less than 5%, so they're mega differentials. And across all of my FPL content, you'll be well prepared for Game Week 1 in terms of the fixtures, the stats, everything you need to know, and they will be covered in future podcasts as well. And that includes the Game Week 1 deadline stream on the 15th of August in just a couple of days' time. We have reached the end of the template team for Fantasy Premier League in the 2025-26 campaign. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think FPL is becoming increasingly more template, or do you think this season marks a shift where the template players are kind of more evenly spread out, so you don't have assets with 70 to 80% ownership as we have done in previous campaigns? That's what the Premier League and FPL is all about. Football is a game of opinions, and let's keep the discussion going across all my social media platforms. They can be found in the description below. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, whether it's for FPL or UCL Fantasy, which returns this month. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, further links to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, as well as Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you very soon for the Game Week 1 deadline stream on the 15th of August, and keep your eyes peeled for the return of UCL Fantasy.